Welcome to Chalk and Code.
where the science of learning meets modern technology.
We're bringing together entrepreneurs, product leaders, researchers, and advocates
To spark ideas, challenge assumptions, and shape the future of learning. Welcome to Chalk and Code, where we explore new and novel directions in education, in technology, and in leadership. Today's guest is Matthew Baker, the new CEO of Tovuti LMS. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Correct. And I don't expect you to know the Swahili accent as well, because I don't. So you're pronouncing it perfect.
Thank you. Uh, Mr. Baker is a veteran of the EdTech industry with a career spanning more than 20 years. He began his journey, as I understand it, as an early team member at Blackboard, where he spent, 13 years helping build the company's global footprint, even through strategic acquisitions like Moodle. He transitioned into leadership roles at Instructure, the company that's behind Canvas LMS, and then reteamed with Blackboard's founder to create class technologies at the kind of front lines of the pandemic's massive shift to virtual learning. And since, I think, May of this year, has taken on a new mission as the CEO of Tovuti LMS, which focuses on corporate learning management. And here he's bringing his deep industry expertise, especially in learning management systems, to what's been described as a people-first culture where the mission is extraordinarily important. Mr. Baker, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Theron. Good to be here.
So to start with, if you don't mind, let's just give our listeners a bit about your background, especially given your deep history in EdTech, broadly conceived, not just K-12, but adult learning as well. You've seen so much. Can you walk us through that journey?
Sure. And it's a incredible one in the sense of being able to be part of how the LMS space really evolved. I remember when I joined Blackboard as one of the kind of the early folks there, sub 50 people in the organization. We were selling a product that we shipped out on a CD-ROM in a box, and we were having to convince teachers, instructors, professors that putting their stuff on a website or not doing anything at all was not as good as what we had from the original. What actually wasn't even called the learning management system. It was originally termed a course management system, a CMS. And did that for, many years. And during that period of 12 to 13 years, we saw the expansion of the LMS grow from a very basic deployment in institutions to an enterprise level across all of the enrollments in schools, and then have that grow from in small footprints in the UK and then Australia to really a global perspective. And so it was really interesting to see that growth, as well as see the technology grow, because as I mentioned a few minutes ago, when we started shipping out our software, we're doing it through a CD-ROM where IT folks will have to take that, put it in their application servers, go find a database to run it, and that was kind of a heavy lift. And so we ended up having 2,500 different clients with different versions of Blackboard across the globe. But then things progressed. Technology kind of caught up to what we were doing, and we moved into what we call the managed hosting environment, where we were able to kind of bring all that in-house and control that as a single entity, but multiple deployments of the software across for the institutions. But then ultimately, this whole idea of cloud and software as a service came about, and Blackboard pivoted, and other companies natively came into that space, like a Canvas that was done by Instructure that I also worked at as well. So I think if I had to encapsulate my career, it was really about being part of the digital transformation of learning in institutions globally, from a software use, as far as how they use the software and what they did to supplement their teaching, as well as how the technology evolved from a very basic idea of deploying the technology in the institutions to the cloud and SaaS and multi-tenancy, which was also really interesting. So it was great to be kind of part of that kind of two-headed monster, the way the market moved together. So that really was, I think, unique with those that started at Blackboard really early and have stayed in the LMS space. So that was kind of my early moments of being in the EdTech space. I do remember, which is kind of a funny anecdote, but when I was interviewing at Blackboard in 2000, the person interviewing asked me, why am I suited to sell into education? And my only answer was I went to school. So, you know, that's all I got. But I guess it was good enough, and then has kept me in the LMS slash ed tech space for now almost 25 years.
So, given I remember a lot of the same shifts. I entered EdTech in roughly that same period of time,
Mhm.
and remember delivering configured servers to customers
Yeah.
and making sure things were set up properly. And the shifts have been dramatic. Given, I have my own opinion on this, but given everything that you've seen, how well do you think, in just EdTech broadly, how well do you think we have implemented these systems such that they really affect learning? Um, and the reason I ask is because so often you see, articles about usage and engagement, efficacy. When it's either school districts or higher education starts measuring the impact of the technology that they have implemented. What's your opinion? What have you seen work and not work?
Well, that's kind of a loaded question for sure,
Yeah.
because it's the idea of efficacy and kind of value add has always been somewhat of a holy grail in LMSs, um, uh, broadly in how they measure their ROI with individual students and in organizations. Um, I think the foundational piece, of course, around LMS is the idea of access. It took the walls of an institution and broke those down to allow for anywhere, anytime access.
Hmm.
Uh, and of course, that's an easy metric to be able to point to, because you can actually track users where they're accessing it, from what IP, their MAC address, all that information can be captured, and that's an easy kind of ROI. Um, as you try to get to the quality of learning and what that's doing, I think that's been always a very, very difficult um, data set to wrap your arms around. Um, we have analytics and we have ways to kind of track um, users in that moment of learning, but I think it's still a little bit skewed based upon the fact that a lot of it happens asynchronously. So you really can't measure the quality of engagement because you don't really know what's happening with the student. You don't know where they're accessing it, how they're accessing it, um, and 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 other than their clicks, it's really hard to measure anything beyond that. And I think that's really what LMSs are still struggling with is really the idea of what the ROI is from a quality of learning standpoint. Um, so it's a tough one. I think we're still as an industry trying to figure that out. One thing that was interesting when I was at Class, the company we started, it was asynchronous. I mean, sorry, it was synchronous, and so you're engaging with students in real time, so you can measure their response, you can measure their engagement, you can measure um, how they're interacting with each other and with content in a synchronous setting, which gave which opened up a little bit the aperture around what that quality of learning is. But it's still fairly difficult, and that's why actually I loved going from the asynchronous side of ed tech into the synchronous side, because it did expand some of the data sets you were working with around quality of learning, um, and and engagement activities that become very crucial. So I think it's still one of those areas that we are trying to figure out in the ed tech space. And the LMS does have still an uphill battle around that, because in fact, you really can't measure in real time how they're engaging and what they're doing and why they're doing it, and anything else around, their environment that may be affecting that interaction. So that's kind of my initial response.
I appreciate how much thought you put into that, especially given your experience with multiple LMSs over 20 years. It's a unique perspective. So let's talk about this transition to Tovuti that you're making. Let's, if you don't mind, let's start off by describing for our listeners um, what Tovuti is, who specifically it's for, and then I would love to know what was it about Tavuti that when you looked at it, you said, "Yes, this is my next mission."
Sure. Um, well, Tovuti is a corporate LMS, so it doesn't have the traditional kind of workflows that an like an EDU LMS would have. Um, that you would find in K-12 or higher education, with the kind of the classroom workflows, the course workflows that comes with more of an EDU LMS. It's focused on corporations and organizations that are really looking to upskill, reskill, onboard, compliance training, all the stuff that happens really in the corporate, federal, um, nonprofit is, I think we discussed earlier, you were in some of that space as well. It's really the training, or in that sense. Um, it's something I was familiar with because in Blackboard, and in Moodle Rooms and others, and in Instructure, they all had kind of corporate parts to their business. So I've been around it. So I felt like, as I was looking at the opportunity, that um, my experience did lend um, credibility in what I bring to the table with if I ran a company like Tavuti. So at least the worlds were close. So as I was speaking and looking in this opportunity, I felt like I had context. I had understanding of what's going on. But the why is really more about the people. And I really have I believe, and I've heard this from a gentleman, man, decades ago, around what makes a software company successful. And if you had to put that in a percentage of 0 to 100%, um, he mentioned that 60% really is around the people. And the software is only 30%. And as I kind of kept that in the back of my mind going through these different companies and opportunities, I started to really understand that. And so it was interesting initially talking with the former founder of Tavuti, who I was replacing. Um, he was very culturally focused and culturally centered. There was a lot of good people. The tenure is pretty amazing when you look at the people in the company. Very little turnover, which is surprising at a kind of a software company in general. Um, and so I thought that was a great foundation for me to build on, because that's really what drives the success of a software company. It's not really the software. I mean, it's funny how how many organizations and school buys bad software. But if they have a good experience and a good connection with the organization, you can get over some of the the weaker points of the software to make it work for you. So that was one thing that I saw, and related to that is there was also an opportunity to take advantage of the people that I've worked with over my last 20 plus years and had good experiences with. So since entering the company, I brought on people that I've worked with and have got faith and confidence in development, in marketing, in sales, to round out that people perspective, and recognize that, hey, the one thing I have control of is who's in the company. And so I feel like we're knocking out the 60%
Mm.
of that equation. The other 30, like I said, software, and the last 10% is really just kind of the luck of the market. What moves in your direction, what doesn't. But if you do the other 90 right, that 10% usually kind of falls in your favor. So that's why I when the opportunity came to me, I thought it was a great one. The other thing that was interesting is, um, being in Blackboard and being in Instructure, I've also seen the impact private equity has had on their companies. And I'll just leave it at that. We don't need to go into to it, but this is Tovuti is VC backed, and having the opportunity to through the hiring process, um, converse and get to know the people in the VC world that are supporting Tavuti. Um, I felt they were very supportive, and recognized the opportunity, and I felt that they were going to back me, and then what I'm going to do and back my people that come in. And so that was also very important to me as well. And then the last piece, because I could talk a lot about this because it was a major decision, is the fact that Tavuti's origins really started around the idea of supporting somebody that was, call it neurodiverse, has that is hearing impaired, and sits in the neurodiverse spectrum, um, to provide a tool that this person was able to learn in, to allow that person to take a driver's test, so that that person could become more self-sufficient, in the world that they were living in. And I thought that that origin story is great, um, because it creates unique opportunities around gamification, micro learning,
Mhm.
and support for not just the Harvard MBAs, but really anybody across that whole spectrum. Um, so that was also a neat kind of understanding that I learned around Tavuti.
So it sounds like you very much embrace this, this kind of commitment to a oh, how would I say it? Well, here's the way I put it. It's been years, but Jim Collins wrote a book called Good to Great, and one of the principles that he talked about was making sure you've got the right people in the organization and the right people in the right places in the organization, and that if you the great companies tend to focus on that culture first. And I think Mr. McLean put it. It was a video I was watching, and he was describing, and I think I've got the quote down. We don't count the profits until we account for the people, and it sounded as if he was describing this was kind of the driving the motivation of the company itself. It was just as much mission minded as anything else. Is that close?
Yeah, I think so. Um, um, I would I would agree with that. And I would also say that right people, right place, right time is a critical component, because we've had to exit good people,
Mm.
um, uh, just because it wasn't the right place or the right time. So you have to treat people with respect, no matter what position they're in. But you also have to understand that are there are timings that need to match up in order for that company to be successful. And 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 kind of the good to great is the idea of the right people, the right place. But I think timing is also really important in how that kind of matches up. And so I'm a big I know that book, and I'm a big believer in the idea of, um that has the people play a critical role, like I said. What's also interesting, just to kind of tease that out even farther, is that when I was at Blackboard, culture was really big, and it was easier to manage because it was an in-person company. This is pre-pandemic, of course, 2000 to 2013, and up until the pandemic and other companies. I felt like I was always a a critical piece to that culture. I liked being part of it. I liked helping drive it. But when we moved to the pandemic, it became very difficult. And so one thing that I have found is that you can't do the same things that you did in um, uh, an in-person culture, an in-office culture, that you have to do remotely, as a remote first company. And a lot of that really comes down to trust and transparency. And I found that is something you really need to place as a pillar to how you run a company in this remote first world. Um, and so that's what we're trying to do as well. Yeah, I think it can. I would agree with you. Um, the the interesting situation, and um, the founder would I know wholeheartedly agree with me on this, is that he recognized he kind of hit his limit. And it was the founder who raised his hand and said, "I need to step away. It's better for the company to do it. Let's go find somebody that can kind of take us to the next level. Help us really scale from where we are now to where we need to go." So that created an environment and kind of a cultural base that when I stepped in there, people were very willing to open their kind of hearts and minds around me coming in and taking my vision and my direction as what is next and what is needed. I think that that was a game changer in helping answer this question that you're asking around how do you manage that scale and deal with what was in the past. Um, the other thing was that this company grew a lot, and that growth um, created a lot of pain, and people were feeling a little bit of that pain and
Mm.
growth. So, with the team that has come in and an understanding of having gone through that pain already, um, that was a kind of an easy fix in the sense of empathy and understanding, so we could make some changes that really impacted not only the client base, but the employee base as well. So we were able to kind of stabilize and help us move in the right direction.
I've seen firsthand how difficult that particular challenge can be, and how great the outcome can be when it's navigated well. Oh, 5 months in, um, 5 months in, I know you're having to make lots of changes. I wish you the best of luck.
Well, it's I one nice thing is, as I mentioned earlier, that um, because I've grown up in this industry, um, I mean, I know you weren't picking words necessarily, but the good thing is I don't feel like it's luck anymore. I've gone through the motions and the cycles so many times. It feels a lot more natural than it would be if I was stepping into a role that I've really never been in or been around in that market. So it's made it a lot easier, um, and it's allowed, I think, me to have more confidence in the decisions. So people recognize that and have confidence in how that flows into the organization and cascades into their own individual roles and what they need to do. So, so it feels good so far, and um, we're excited to continue this effort, and I think I know we have great employees, and they're really behind what we're doing. So it can I appreciate your support, and I think we'll continue to see
And,
right direction.
you're exactly right. I wasn't picking my words.
No, I'm not gonna hold you to it, so you're fine.
So let's transition a bit and talk about Tovuti itself. Um, the and as you know, the LMS market's kind of crowded. So, what is it that you think sets Tovuti apart from some of the other offerings?
Um, well, there's a lot that I could talk about.
Mhm.
First, I want to highlight and just kind of put a bow on it. The people are great. Um, and that's really kind of the driving force. All your interactions from support, client success, sales, engineering, and support, and kind of services. All those need to be quality interactions, and I think we have that in spades. So that means a lot. Um, what it also does is um, it allows us to set ourselves apart as kind of a small fish in a big pond, in the sense of we compete with the big folks. If you look at um, um, different opportunities that we're in, um, we are one of the two or three. and sometimes 4 vendors that are taking part in these opportunities. So we're playing with the big guys, but we're a lot smaller, and that allows us to craft our experience a little bit better.
Mm.
Uh, I use the example of if a prospect or a client needs to speak with me, um, it's usually one level separated, one generation beyond their current contact, because a sales rep, a client success manager, they can bring me in at any given time. So getting to the decision makers, getting to those that help move this organization forward, can happen really quickly. Larger companies that are 1,000, 2,000, whatever size company, you have to go through 4 or 5 different levels to get to what would be my role. And I think that provides that nimble and agile experience that organizations that are buying an LMS or are new to the market want to see. Um, the other thing that it provides too is us being a little more nimble when it comes to the software. We don't have, we have a very strong client base, but we also can pivot much easier. So I think that's another benefit that we have. The last piece that I would highlight when it comes to the technology itself is we're extremely configurable. And one thing that's interesting when you compare my experience in the education side, kind of the EDU side, compared to the corporate side, is that in education, the use cases were really tight. Um, they weren't broad and wide. Like, every institution kind of teaches the same way. Like, and it's been done for 200 plus years. So, what LMSs need to do from a Blackboard and Canvas and Desire to Learn and Moodle and such, we're all pretty similar. They all pretty much do the exact, at this point, they all do much the exact same thing. But when you go into the corporate space, the way they use it, both internal training, external training, partner training, client training, onboarding, whatever it may be, a lot of it can be extremely different. Some use subscriptions, some not use subscriptions. Um, it the need for flexibility is much greater in the corporate space than it is the higher ed space, and K-12. So one thing that Tovuti has, and is one of our kind of our strong suits, um, is the ability to be very configurable. So it allows us to speak to a lot of different use cases and needs, and the product can kind of follow and support those use cases. So that's something that I've come to understand much greater now, even in the last 5 months, compared to what I knew in the EDU side.
Okay. So if I were to just to check my understanding and try and tie it back some of the things that we've talking about the culture, what I hear you saying is that one of Tavuti's primary strengths is its ability to be more client focused and provide more tailored services to clients, and that becomes important, especially in this space when you have to configure an implementation to match a particular client's needs. Am I
Yeah,
correct?
I um, I if I had to break that down, I would say, um, it's just the ability to connect with your client base, with your prospects, and it's not necessarily building a very complex and call it integrated solution. It's more of just being able to listen and understand and connect with your those you're working with. I would probably just say it's a little bit more simplistic than you're highlighting. Um, it more kind of on a fundamental level of, hey, we have good people, our people listen, and we will get what you need, um, through that process.
Okay.
Does that make sense? I'm trying to kind of nuance it a little bit. I feel it's a little bit more basic. It's just the fact that, when you have, um, somebody on the other end that's willing to listen and connect with the individual, and with what the needs are, that is a big deal.
It is. I've been as we've been talking about it, I've been thinking about some of the experience that I had watching software products get implemented, especially in K-12, and how crucial it was to have um, the people who could listen to the client very closely and who had close relationships or developed close relationships with the client. And it sounded, yeah, I was relating some of my own experience back to what I heard you say earlier about how important that was, and tie that into kind of Tavuti's edge in a market when you've got, big players who are probably, like old ERP systems, sometimes would go in and say, this is the way to do it. This is how you should implement. And it sounds like you're describing Tavuti as being much more nimble.
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, and I also, um, even though we're the smaller folks playing in the bigger pond or pool, um, we also kinda have that startup, feel, and, we're not the monoliths, and we're not the kinda old school ERPs that say, "This is the way." Um, we can be much more accommodating and supportive, by having that listening ear. And I think just real quick, that extends that, even farther, into the positive space is the fact that, um, we spend a lot of time, on our product side listening to our clients, um, and understanding what their needs are and figuring out how we develop to their needs and their priorities. But because we're doing that truly on a daily basis, um, that those needs get prioritized correctly. And so what we end up doing is for the common good, the greater good of our market and our client base, not just the one that's screaming loudest. Sometimes that is important because that things needs to get fixed. But I think that's also, um, being kind of smaller, call it not necessarily startup because that's more of a mentality. It allows us to be, responsive as well.
Right. Oh, speaking of clients, is there an ideal Tavuti client? I know you're in multiple verticals.
Um, well, the first idea is we want those that use our product to be successful. And so what we're finding is that, as we go through the process of speaking with opportunities and potential users, is understanding what their use cases are. And we need to make sure we fit those use cases. Again, we're extremely configurable. We're very customizable, which can get people lost. And so I think part of that process of selling to your ideal, um, kind of customer profile is understanding how they use it. Um, and so it doesn't really, I mean, we don't really break down, okay, we only sell to this group. But what we do break down is, okay, how are you going to use it? And do your use cases fit our capability set? And that's where kind of the magic happens. If that works, then we can really be successful together. We do see success, um, greater success in different verticals like, software, because there's a lot of either turnover or you're training outside organizations to support your own product that you need to train them on. Retail is also, a positive market that we've seen. Non for profits and kind of the healthcare industry, seems to have a tendency to like us more than others.
Hmm,
So that's probably a way that, um, I could I could define who we sell to.
okay. Now, are there technologies? This is kind of a leading question, but I've been wondering, are there technologies that you see, especially from your standpoint of your experience with LMSs and now coming into Tavuti, emerging technologies, and the obvious, one is AI, that are going to really accelerate either the utility of these kind of applications. I know Tavuti introduced, I think it's Dizzy.
Dizzy, yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Our kind of first step into AI. Yeah, it is a leading one, but I'll take it. That's just fine. I know we're all going with this. It's something that um, is not just a buzzword anymore. A couple of years ago, the idea of AI was a buzzword, and you had to do something in with AI. I think the the biggest problem that organizations, or I should say LMS vendors, are going to have is to go beyond bolting on AI. Like, because it's more than just putting it into a specific workflow in your core product. AI really needs to be more front and center, because if you can harness the power in the right way, there's a lot you can do with it. Um, it really extends the capabilities of designers, team leads, managers in the product, to help them better deliver customized and focused training for the user communities. And it also allows for individual users to customize their own experience. But it can't be just a bolt on to the car. It can't be just an accessory to the car. You kind of need to reorganize your whole platform to have it be more AI first. And I think the larger kind of big monolith companies are going to have a harder time with that. Um, and I really believe that if you don't have an AI first perspective and software kind of roadmap, you're going to fall behind.
Mm.
Uh, Again, 2 years ago, it was more like, oh yeah, we have to, you know, have this one little AI piece into our product so we can call ourselves AI, kind of certified or AI enabled. But it's I think it's gone way beyond that now. And I'm excited for what we're doing, and see that it's going to be a leader in how organizations need to develop their software.
Oh, in one previous interview, I was interviewing someone who was I was speaking to someone who was a career educator, and this career educator was excited about the technology, but at the same time expressed some trepidation. This was a K-12 educator about the potential for over reliance on AI to either develop content or assess students. Because the point that the gentleman was making was that we still need some kind of human intermediary between the learner and the AI. That at least for the time being, it wasn't quite ready to kind of turn it on and just let it run. But that doesn't sound like what, how Dizzy works at all, given that it's more focused on content creation.
Yeah, yeah, and Dizzy's, again, our first step into it, which is a um like it's an initial feature kind of tool in the product that allows you to build a course through a single prompt.
Mm,
Uh, but what we realize is that you need to building a course is just not single prompt motivated. Um, a learning designer is not going to go in there and say, okay, I need a course on pharmaceutical X, Y, and Z, and put in a single prompt and get a whole course. That is to build that course, to build that learning pathway, is very specific and can go in different ways. And so you need multiple prompts across the composition. And so that's what we're doing, as well as putting it in other parts, and really looking at how AI can be not only part of the content creation, but it could also be part of the experience on the learner, and can be part of the administration of the software. I think um, K-12 especially, um, b- dealing with the learner is a different scenario than dealing with a corporate learner. And I would agree wholeheartedly on the side of that your other um, person that you interviewed, that intermediary is very much required, because you need to um, be more, what would be the um, careful and risk averse of what you put out there to K-12 students compared to how you're dealing with the corporate focus. So
mm,
there's it's a big question with a lot of different answers, and I think those answers changed based upon the different markets you're focusing on. And w- it's I think the easiest market that to deal with is the corporate space, because when you get into the education, kind of K through 12, um, and higher and further education, you still have a lot more you're having to grapple with when it comes to privacy and and kind of the exposure of content, and managing all that is I think is much more complex.
Hmm. Hmm. So let's look to the future. Given you're starting, been in there for 5 months, what do you see as your challenges and the direction over the next, say, 5 to 10 years?
Well, um, I think the challenge is, how do you go from what has been a very um um eh, well, I think the market just hasn't moved a lot in the sense of the product, whether it's K through 12 higher ed or corporate. When you look at the products themselves, the evolution has kind of slowed down over the last 5 to 10 years. Um, what I sold 10, 15 years ago is very similar to what you would be selling now. So the innovation has really almost come to a standstill. So what what we're looking at, and kind of our challenge, is how do we take, whether it's AI or anything else, and use that to innovate our product and innovate the market. Um, we believe that there's going to be um, some shakeup and some changes in the market, based a lot of it, I think, based upon bringing AI into the picture. But there's going to be some disruption, and we want to be part of that disruption. So that's our challenge. Like, where does that disruption happen? How can we make it happen? And with what tools and products can we do that with? So that's the I think the biggest challenge is it needs to be disrupted. And we want to be part of that. We just got to figure out how. Um,
Ah,
you know, and the other challenge is that the LMS space is a very crowded one. So how do you differentiate yourself? And one of those is from a disruptor and through new technology and innovation is one, but you have to potentially find different markets. And one that we've been able to jump into is the Fed space. And I think you mentioned you sold into that space before, or supported that previously, or I think even now. But we just received our FedRAMP moderate status to sell into the FedRAMP space, which reduces our um, our competitive um, kind of community down to a small handful. And so that's another one, is how do you break into new markets and get into spaces where it's not as competitive. And that's one thing that we've been able to do, and did it in record time in order to get there. So we're excited about that. And that was an organization called Knox that had just kind of come out through friends of mine that started it, that got us there in 90 days.
mm,
Um, and so we're really happy to be into a market that is less competitive, but the need is just as great. As a matter of fact, it's probably greater, because a lot of these government entities are being asked to do more with less. We've seen the reduction in force that is happening across a lot of these organizations, and technology is, I think, going to play a big part into helping them achieve their goals with what they've been given and are tasked to do.
yeah. That's, if anybody was interested, that's the FedRAMP marketplace. So
Correct.
if you to go and look for you there, they'd need to look under LMSs or learning management, and then for Knox, because Tovuti would show up underneath Knox.
Knox, correct. Yep. So they're basically our vehicle, if you will, um, in order to do that. So and Knox has done it for quite a few other companies as well. But yes, so Knox would be the place we're in. But in many cases that people already know kind of who the LMS players are. But you have to be listed there. Like, you're not going to sell unless you're listed there. And we're grateful to be able to be there and be able to compete in that space.
Right. Congratulations. That 90 days is quick.
Yeah, yeah. But again, it's really technology driven, right? Um, and the director of FedRAMP actually is one of my old colleagues at Blackboard, and he's very innovative and recognizes that more technology is needed in the Fed space, and he's very supportive of helping companies provide that kind of ramp, if you will, and not being cliche on the wording, but ramp into getting into the Fed space. And so it's a great place to be, and very supportive across the FedRAMP marketplace, as well as those helping us to get there.
Well, I've got, as we're wrapping up, I've got two final questions that I'd like to ask you. And the first is based on your experience as um, a, a leader in education technology for more than 20 years. I would like to know, given how much buzz happens, especially in EdTech, this new solution, this new process, whatever it happens to be, how do you personally separate the signal from the noise that we get in the market?
Um, well, I think you've got to understand um, and be in the market to know what is what. Um, you can't just this is not one of those markets you can just read the news and figure out what's going on. Like it's very unique, and I've seen this with many companies that you have these founders that come in and start it and spend a decade or more building a company in the ed tech space, and as leadership changes happen, those that from the outside come in that don't really understand ed tech, and the decisions they make are really poor. So I think the biggest thing you can do to separate the signal and the noise is actually be in the noise. Uh, it allows you to really know what's the difference. You can't just look at from the outside in and start picking out what is the signal, what is the noise. You got to kind of be in it to really understand it. And I think that's the biggest thing that I've learned is that jumping into it feet first and staying in there, has allowed me to almost naturally, filter out what is what. And so I think that's the one thing that has helped me is this is not an analyst, like, looking and say, "Oh, yeah, they're doing what's right and they're doing what they're doing wrong," because they've read all the news and the reports around it. I think it's different once you get inside, and you're playing the game. Um Go ahead. Do you
Eh,
wanna follow?
yeah, I wanted to drill into it and ask you. So if you're in it, what does that mean for you personally?
Um, uh, Good question, and if I had to think for a second, I would probably say, um, it's not the perspective of doing what's best for the company initially, it's doing what's best for the learner, and then associating your efforts as a company around the learner. Because one of the questions, that was asked, how and I think this kinda relates to it, is how you are you balancing experimentation with the need to scale?
Mm,
Uh, and, or kind of like dealing with revenue, compared to dealing what's best for, the the learner. There's always a balance of what you have to do from a revenue standpoint compared to what the market needs. And you can't just do one or the other. You have to have that balance. And so, um, I think one of my dear friends told me, if we build every single thing that a teacher wanted, we go out of business,
mm,
because they don't understand what you need to do to actually build a successful business. But if we only did what we thought would be successful and not focused on the learner, um, then you would probably fail too. So to your question, what that means is having a strong perspective of what the learner needs and how to overlay that with the company direction and the decision the company needs to make in order for them to be successful. If you kind of keep those mutually exclusive, you're going to fail.
mm,
You need to figure out how you bring those two together And if you can do that well, then you'll succeed.
Okay, thank you. And then I have one last question that I ask everyone, and that is, what are we not thinking about in EdTech that we should be thinking about?
Um, I've highlighted this a little bit, and I think what we need to look at is what can we do to disrupt the market? Um, that we just haven't seen a lot of innovation, and rather than trying to sell the company and have somebody else buy it to have that be able to sell it again, like there's now this kind of com- this process of buying and selling in the LMS space, but that has really pulled out the innovation. Um, and it really is just more revenue focused. We need to figure out where we can disrupt the market to deliver a better product and a better experience for our learners.
Fascinating. Well, Ed, Mr. Baker, thank you very much for spending time with us. If our listeners wanted to connect with you or Tavuti, how would they do it? Where would they find you?
Well, um, you can just go to our website, tovutilms.com. And if you want to email me directly, it's matt.baker@tovutiteam.com. And we're happy to help you in any way, shape, or form. But we just appreciate you allowing us to take a little bit of time and talk about ourselves. It's always a nice thing to be able to do. And hopefully people got something out of it.
Well, it's been our pleasure, truly. And for our listeners, thank you for joining us today, especially given how much of the history in EdTech that Mr. Baker has seen. Thank you for joining us and exploring some of the lessons that we can learn from Mr. Baker's experience and his unique point of view, and especially as he the challenges that he sees between balancing continuity and change and disruption in this season of transition for Tavuti. We hope that some part of our conversation today sparked some new idea, some new insight that you can pursue. Join us again next time on Chalk and Code.
Thanks for tuning in. If today's conversation sparked new insights or challenged your thinking, we'd love to hear from you.
Visit flexion.us for more information and join us here next time on Chalk and Code.